Can you hear
Hey
me?
there.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so we just talked about infrastructure. Was wondering what your thoughts about about infrastructure was.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to the slightly delayed Che Day post-show discussion. I'm here with Mr. Chaitanya Commandori, PhD history Commandori.
I do not
I,
have such a
I
common.
love that Ari has bestowed upon you an honorary doctorate.
Yes, I know. I don't want to. The problem the person who's received the most honorary doctorates in history.
I'm a little scared who this could be.
Yeah, should be very scared about who the answer to this question is.
Is it someone who we should not really talk about anymore in public
Yeah,
life?
it's someone we should not talk about anymore.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, the first honorary doctorate I believe went to Samuel Johnson, very well deserved for creating the dictionary of the English language.
Yes.
So that was very
That
well.
that one's deserved.
Yes, very deserved. Yes. So, certain other individuals who received those honorary doctorates, not so.
Not so much. It's true.
Yes, correct. But yeah, it's fun. I could be the honorary doctorate, on the air. There has been controversy. I feel like there was somebody who received an honorary doctorate and was trying to actually use it as a real degree. I don't remember who it was, but I feel like there was somebody who did this.
Well, Tucker Carlson has warned us of the dangers of non-medical doctorate degrees.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
He's very concerned about them.
He is, The worst one I thought was Dr. Phil. I
Who?
thought that was
Dr. Phil. Yes, Dr. Phil.
Who I thought was an actual doctor in psychiatry or psychology or something of that nature, and he wasn't. He was a physical therapist.
Yeah.
And he was dispensing advice along those lines. But anyway, let's talk about infrastructure real quick.
One last. Even an actual medical doctor sometimes can be full of quackery, as evidenced by the current Jeopardy host.
I did not know anything about that. Who's the current Jeopardy host?
It's Dr. Oz is the current.
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
Yes. Apparently, he and Trebek were friends, but
wasn't it Kitty Couric or wasn't?
Yeah, she was on for 2 weeks, and they've given Dr. Oz 2 weeks. Every question is about vitamin supplements and
oh my gosh, yes,
and raspberry ketones. But yes, let us move on to.
My vote is always for Ken Jennings. By the way, I've always.
Yes, I think Ken Jennings did a spectacular job early on.
I really
in the guest hosting run. It was just.
You just have to give him props for everything he knew. He was very impressive.
Sure. Plus, I also like the fact that he clearly knew 95% of all the questions being asked. And I like the slight hint of fatherly disappointment in his voice when a contestant would miss a question.
Yeah, that was my thing with Trebek. I always got a sense with Trebek, if you took away the cards, he wouldn't know anything. He wouldn't know his own name.
No. I got a sense that he actually was pretty well versed in a lot of those categories, but he did give the appearance of knowing everything, which was key for any game show host.
Yeah, that's true. That was very true.
Especially when it came to sports categories like football and
Well, I remember in the 90s, he used to sell this series of cassettes called Fire in the Mind. I don't know if you remember this at all.
Trebek did?
Yes, and these were the great books. They were read on tape. And the thing was, it would take you years to read these actual books. But with Fire in the Mind, you can master the world's knowledge in a matter of months.
So this was like proto-Quibi.
Yes, it was. It was proto-Quibi. It was. I don't know if there's something like that with Audible where they just have great books being read by people or by individuals.
But in Spark Notes, in Cliff Notes form, or just the great books being read?
It was in Spark Notes, Cliff Notes form, but they also would have extracts. Yeah, so they would have those things as well. So that was, but I remember him very much, and I was like, oh, this is his secret.
That's right.
He's just receiving this via audio tape. all this knowledge. But going on to infrastructure, let's segue back to
Yes, yes. This is tea with Jane Shy.
this. Is exactly right.
I'm having a peppermint tea.
I'm having water.
What? This is just where we're disappointing our name, the namesake of
Yeah,
our of our little podcast.
get a real tea. Yeah. Um,
But
but
yeah, so I'm all about Biden 3.0, as Ari pointed out. I like that. Here's maybe part of the advantage of having an older president, because at a certain age, you're just full NFG. You don't you don't care anymore. And he's like, I'm just going to go 2 trillion in on the infrastructure.
yeah, and what's really interesting to me is the way he rolled it out, and I thought it was very pointed at Donald Trump. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that he clearly knew what he was doing with having an infrastructure week that's an actual infrastructure week, having an infrastructure speech that's an actual infrastructure speech, going to Pittsburgh, which Donald Trump always talked about. He always said, I was elected mayor of Pittsburgh, not the mayor of Paris, when he was
Yeah.
pulling out of the Paris Accords.
Right. And as I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Right, yes.
I always like to respond to that by saying, you lost in Pittsburgh,
Right, he did love Pittsburgh.
both the
But
popular and the electoral vote.
yes, and this time he lost the entire state of Pennsylvania, so
Yeah.
that was really great. But yeah, he always, that was it was very purposeful choosing Pittsburgh, talking about Pittsburgh infrastructure week and the way it was unfurled, having an actual plan that's very detailed, having an actual plan that has real how it's going to be paid for through corporate tax increases. And it's something that can really pass the legislature, as opposed to Trump, who just really kind of just used infrastructure, I thought, for a lot of macho posturing. He would put on the hard hat sometimes and talk about infrastructure. And it was all one of the big things I kind of felt about it was, Trump was aware, and I think Republicans were aware of how popular infrastructure spending was. It was very popular, specifically with white working class voters who were the Republican base. But the Republicans had no interest in actually ever passing infrastructure because
Mm-hmm.
they knew that by passing it, they would endanger those tax cuts for the rich,
Right.
the corporate tax cuts, the tax cuts for the donor class. And they didn't. So they never wanted to touch infrastructure in any real way. So they were very happy to let him flail around on infrastructure week.
Yeah, it's truly ridiculous because ultimately the people who benefit the most from infrastructure improvements are corporations and the rich donor class, as you
Right.
Because corporations, of course, by far use infrastructure far more than the average citizen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, they pass down that usage down to the everyday consumer, but the idea that people would want tax breaks instead of having this business infrastructure improved is mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's a phrase like penny smart pound foolish,
Yeah.
right? But that's kind of I think the way that the Republican donor class thinks about it. And
Mhm.
so on this issue was really a case where the Republicans chose their donor class over their actual voting base. So a part of I think the issue with the infrastructure week, reason that Colbert was able to make fun of it at the end of each infrastructure week, like he would just make fun of he would do a montage of, oh, this was infrastructure week, and he would do like a montage of all the craziness non-infrastructure that would happen. And this was always played by the media as a sign of Trump's incompetence, that on infrastructure week you could not stay on message, etc. I actually also believe it's a symbol of Republican craftiness and mendacity. I look back on the week that culminated in Trump in the House and the Senate passing those tax cuts, right, and putting them on Trump's desk to be signed. That week was crazy.
Yeah.
It featured Omarosa getting fired. It featured Doug Jones incredibly winning in Alabama against a pedophile who was endorsed by Trump, and Trump tweeted support for him on the day of the election, said get out there and vote for Roy Moore.
Yeah.
The allegations against him are not true, and it featured more Russia. There was all these issues with Putin placing 3 calls to Trump and Trump taking those calls that week. He called the Russian collusion charge a hoax that week. Said he might pardon Michael Flynn that week. I mean, there was plenty of craziness that week that could have easily derail the tax cuts. But
Right.
it didn't happen because the Republicans had Trump's back on the tax cuts. They never had his back on infrastructure. So the result was that they were very happy to let him fail on infrastructure because they were never really that interested in passing it. And the only question I have in my mind was how aware of the strategy was Trump? Was Trump like aware that that Mitch McConnell had no interest in this infrastructure plan, and he was sort of doing this on purpose, like this flailing around and failing with it, or was he just kind of an unwitting dupe? That's something I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's going to be a huge question about his administration in general. That future presidential historians are going to have to look back once the Freedom of Information Act
Comes to
pass on his papers to see just how aware he actually was of all the goings on in his administration, or if it was really just him sitting in his bathroom tweeting day and night. And
I don't know.
both.
It's a really good question because I do think that he understood on an intuitive level how popular this was. I think he understood intuitively that his crowds liked infrastructure, that these were working class white voters who really like these types of projects and were very big supporters of it. You see it in all the polling. Republican voters really overwhelmingly support Biden's infrastructure plan.
Well, that's that's the dangerous gift that he has. He's an intuitive speaker and politician. He knows what appeals. He doesn't know the details of why that appeals to people. He just knows what gets applause for him.
Yeah, and I think that comes out of his TV experience. Like he understood his audience. Like I think that was one thing about Trump is he always kind of understood the audience. He knew exactly which buttons to push on them, and he knew what would sound good in a rally. You know.
Yeah.
The best example I think of this is that during the campaign he never bothered attacking Biden because Biden was just seen as non-toxic and rather benign to his audience. So he would go back and he would talk about Hillary all the time, and then he would talk about AOC, and then he would talk about Obama. You know, and, there's a really great
women and people of color. It's much easier targets for
exactly what they were going for. They were going specifically for that racialist element and also that gender specific element with the AOC and with Kamala Harris, etc., Hillary Clinton. So that was something.
So what? No, go on. Finish, please.
No, there was a great line I remember reading about CPAC where like all the anti-Hillary merchandise, all the anti-Obama merchandise, all the anti-AOC and anti-Kamala merchandise was selling out. But then there's one vendor who was selling anti-Biden merchandise. And he's like, I can't give this stuff away. Nobody really wants this. Nobody's interested in the anti-Biden merchandise. It's not.
It reminds me of a time I was up in Boston. This was in like 2000, before they had broken their curse. And I was like, I'm going to go see a game at Fenway. So I went there, and the streets were filled with people with, screw the Yankees, stronger words than that. All this anti-Yankee paraphernalia. And I was like, oh, are the Yankees playing today? And they're like, no, it's the Orioles. Why are you showing all this anti-Yankees merchandise today if you're playing against the Orioles? But that was the go-to talking point for the Red Sox. And
I had the same exact experience at Fenway Park. The exact same experience where I feel they were. I don't know who they were playing. It definitely wasn't the Yankees. Because you would not have gotten a ticket to see them play against the Yankees. That place was
I walked up to the window and got like a $10 ticket to go see. I think who was it? Cal Ripken or Nolan Ryan that played for the Orioles back in the day?
Cal Ripken.
Yeah, I got to actually see him play one last time, so that was great.
Yeah, and but I remember like if it was the Yankees, you would never get a ticket. Like people would be like in the hallways of Fenway. Boxed in. But I remember like just being amazed at the enormous anti-Yankee merchandise that was at Fenway Park.
Right. Even when the Yankees are nowhere near the city.
Correct. And that is exactly what they've become. Yeah, they've become exactly that. They are very.
And Hillary is the Republicans' Yankees at this point.
Right. I mean, I remember that when Biden passed the COVID stimulus, thinking Biden is just not toxic. If this was like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, even, it would have been just a nonstop fight for this piece of legislation. Like it just would have, because they would have been able to press all these buttons of fear on when it came to Obama or to Hillary or certainly to Kamala Harris or AOC that they're simply not able to do with Biden. I mean, Biden is extremely popular. I saw today he was at 61% in the AP poll.
Right.
And all his policies are even more popular than that. Like significant numbers of Republicans just like him in his direction in general. I can't imagine anybody with this vaccine rollout thinks that things were in any way better with the other guy. I mean, it's hard for me to even imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's not free from problems, obviously. Here in New York City, they just lowered the age to 30 plus yesterday, and it's nearly impossible to get an appointment. I lucked out and have an appointment for this Saturday for a little
That's great. Yeah.
Moderna action, but it is crazy. But that's more of a local failure, I think, than a problem on the national level, because we have the doses here, which is the job of the national government.
Yeah.
So what were some of your favorite bits of shade that he low key tossed at Trump today?
Trump today?
Yeah.
Well, so he talked specifically about creating the job creation, right? And how he talked about how the job of infrastructure has lied dormant for the last 4 years, right? Very specifically talking about that. He talked very specifically about how his plan is paid for, and is paid for by corporations who benefited enormously over policies enacted over the past 4 years. So he's constantly like poked at everything that Trump had kind of done over the last 4 years. There were very sort of subtle little digs. They were things that you would have to like sort of really read the speech and say, oh, that's a dig at Trump. Like he's very classy. He maintains, he's not, I mean, compared to Trump, I mean, everybody is, but he maintains
it is a low bar.
Yeah, a very sort of up level. Like he never kind of gets into it with Republicans in any way. Obama was sort of like that. The one Democratic president who kind of would occasionally get into it with Republicans, I do remember, is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton would actually call out Republicans in speeches. He had the Southern drawl, so he was able to sort of it made it sound like that they were sort of traitors to the white working class, specifically in his speeches. But but Biden is much more like Obama, where he's I would say almost kind of Olympian, where he kind of is just like above the fray in terms of the fight.
Right. Which he absolutely should be. I know people sometimes get upset at Biden or even Obama back in the day about not going at the Republicans a little harder, but you're right. The president should be above.
Yeah. You broke up just right there. Yeah, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, you broke up. What was your last comment again?
I'm just saying he should always seem to be above the partisan fray, even though he's the de facto leader of the Democratic Party. But as president, he needs to be president for everyone.
He shouldn't be responding on Twitter about Little Nas X's sneakers.
Right. Clearly, that's the domain of governors.
Governor of South Dakota.
To warn us of the dangers of.
I believe the #1 per capita COVID cases are in South Dakota because of all those Harley rallies and things like that.
Right, and yet their governor is going after sneakers.
Yes, she takes the Twitter to go after sneakers sold by Lil Nas X. So that's not something Biden's never going to be part of that. Like he'll never do that. But you kind of forget that was once very normative for presidents pre-Trump. I remember reading about how George Bush Sr. was basically advised by Roger Ailes at that time, who was an advisor in the White House, telling him he needed to go on Regis and Kathy Lee. That this is a wonderful show. This is a middle America audience. You should go on the show and show people that you too are middle America. And he just thought it was beneath the president. He said, I'm president. I'm not down with Regis and Kathy Lee. That's like not something a president should be doing, right? Going on Regis and Kathy Lee. And then you looked at Trump, who was like literally on everything. Like he was subtweeting the Oscars, and he was commenting on Grammy nominations. And
No, nothing was beneath the office of President Trump.
President Trump, yeah, he was like Joan Rivers on the red carpet, like making
But
comments.
meanwhile, Obama hit that balance perfectly back in the day. Like his appearances on Fallon and SNL were pitch perfect almost.
Yeah, and he did Between Two Ferns, if you remember, with Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah,
And
all with the idea of helping to promote like a healthcare message so that
correct.
people would be aware of it.
Yes, absolutely. So he was really part of the popular culture, and he knew how to use it. I think Biden kind of realizes that pop culture isn't him, so he's not even gonna try with
Well,
it.
yeah, I think Biden is in part aware of how kind of blissfully dull his administration is in comparison to the past 4 years, and he's allowing everyone to enjoy that meditative state of stillness.
Yeah, and I think that's a real big part of his popularity. I think that's exactly what it is. People like having a break. They like the idea of the White House not on every single social or cultural issue.
Well, it's like you said, opposite day, right? Biden is pure opposite day to Trump. It's all action, it's all substance, and no social media flash or self-aggrandizing.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video that was this weekend of Trump speaking at a wedding in Mar-a-Lago.
Where he crashed the wedding.
Yeah, and
Terrible.
he literally could not help himself. He had to insert himself in this wedding, and talk about, did you miss me enough? How horrible Biden is. Like he just couldn't be. He had to be part of this wedding. And Biden is just completely the opposite of that. Like he would just never.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what those people get. They deserve that for having their wedding at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah,
and I hope, he probably did it. He probably did it to eat up a portion of the open bar time so that people will be forced to
that's actually an interesting conspiracy theory about Trump. So, like wedding
by their own drink.
Yeah,
it's like, sir, they're really hitting the bar hard. Okay.
Yeah,
let me go in there, break it up.
In terms of like terrible places to have a wedding, I mean, Mar-a-Lago would definitely be one of them. That would definitely be, if you were to do a Hangover movie now, the Ed Helms character would find out that he'd married Heather Graham at Mar-a-Lago. Like that would, as opposed to Chapel, that would actually be the nightmare location for any possible nuptials. But yeah, I guess that sort of wraps up the infrastructure. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Well, one, just some correction notes. I can't believe you ignored. You said Biden has no controversies, but you ignored his longstanding feud with Vanilla Ice.
Is this an actual thing, or
no, it's not an actual thing. I did like the point that you and Jason made about national security and how infrastructure is tied into national security.
We have to also think about climate change as part of that, to be honest.
Right.
I think that's something that I mean, the Pentagon does. The Pentagon is adjusting war games and planning based on climate change.
They should, of course, and of course it affects infrastructure severely, as we've seen up here in New York, and certainly down in the South.
Yeah. But I remember Vanilla Ice actually endorsed Trump. I believe I remember that.
Yes, he did. So it's not entirely.
he was actually the New Year's Eve entertainment at Mar-a-Lago.
Was he really?
Yes, I think he was. I think he was New Year's.
They might have actually thrown him into the entertainment package for that wedding that Trump crashed.
Oh my god!
Just part of his contract. But I don't expect Biden to, come out and condemn Vanilla Ice's limited edition Payless.
Yeah, I don't.
Sneaker release.
No, I don't think that's going to be the case. He's not going to be involved in that kind of controversy whatsoever.
Rest in peace, Payless. By the way,
is Payless out of business?
I thought they did. Didn't they go out?
Maybe, I don't know.
It's a shame. They had a great pair of comfortable dress shoes that I always used to get. You could run and play sports in those things. They were great.
Oh, I had no idea. I was very sad when Foot Locker, basically all the Foot Lockers around me are closed up.
But Foot Locker's still in business, though, right?
Yeah, but they closed up a lot of locations. It's very hard to find a decent Foot Locker, you know. And I think I finally found one decent Foot Locker, and they're like, "Oh, we can just order you the shoe online."
That's what it is. You just gotta find the shoe you like and just order it online now.
Order it online, yeah. That's exactly the case.
Online shopping is putting poor little mom and pop stores like Foot Locker out of business.
So anyway, is there anything else? I guess we can wrap it up. I guess.
No, unless is there anything else you wanted to add to your post-show discussion?
No, I do not know who Meek Mill is. I don't think I've ever heard of Meek Mill. I do not want to admit that on air. I'm admitting that here to you.
Ari has a deep well of.
Oh, you do. I think Sean Carter, I believe, is Jay-Z, so I kind of picked that up.
Yeah.
But I do not know who Meek Mill is. I have no idea who that is. So I do admit ignorance on that.
Maybe he's I don't know if they had a feud or if he was on Jay-Z's label or who knows.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even follow any of those feuds. You know, after Brahms and Wagner's epic battle, I kind of tuned out of the musician feud.
Oh yeah. I'm more of a Bob Fosse versus Jerome Robbins feud
Was that
kind of guy.
Bob Fosse versus Jerome Robbins?
It wasn't. I think it was much like the Red Sox versus the Yankees kind of feud, where Fosse maybe felt competitive with everyone on Broadway. I think it was more Bob Fosse and Hal Prince had sort of a competition.
Yeah, I mean, as a movie person, there's no comparison. Bob Fosse was a great.
Oh, Fosse's a brilliant director. All That Jazz is one of my favorite.
Nor Hal Prince in cinema was ever able to.
Did Hal Prince ever direct a movie?
He ever directed any? I don't think he ever directed a single.
I mean, Jerome Robbins' choreography is at least captured beautifully in the West Side Story film. Right. So,
I mean, I saw Hal Prince's direction. This is a bizarre, not sequitur, but I saw his direction of Don Giovanni that he did for that. And I thought it was a great production, except for the fact that when the ghost comes in at the end, the Commendatore, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a great moment. The ghost comes in, they're wearing ghost makeup, and and you're always wondering. I'm wondering throughout the entire opera, what's the ghost going to look like? Like, how are they going to make up the ghost, right?
Right, because everyone's just expecting the ghost from Amadeus.
Right, which is phenomenal, by the way. That sequence in Amadeus is, I don't know who I should know who actually sang the Commendatore part in Amadeus, but that's actually the best version of that I've ever heard.
By the way, for any of the two people watching this post-show stream, we have now wandered to the part of the show where we're probably just going to be talking about things. So feel free to stay with us or go about your day.
Yeah, we should probably call this a day, but I will say the one thing.
No, finish your Hal Prince Don Giovanni story.
So the ghost comes out. It's not. There's no ghost. They just have lighting. They have like this. He had this kind of interesting lighting that represents the kind of the spirit of the ghost, and then you could tell. I mean, the actual singer was, behind the stage singing the role, right?
Right.
But
I wonder if that was Jules Fisher. He famously long collaborated with multiple Tony Award-winning lighting designer Jules Fisher, so it was probably.
I mean, the lighting was phenomenal. It did look like a ghost apparition, but I remember being very disappointed. It was like the end of It was like the end of Contact when you're waiting to see the aliens, and it turns out it's just Jodie Foster's dad. So exactly that. But that's about it. But thank you for joining this.
Yes. Thank you again. Tune in next either Tuesday or Wednesday if Che gets bumped again, or a post-Che day or Wednesday. Talk. For Che Commandori and me, Shia or Jurgensen. Have a good week.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.